Welcome back to another one of your Flip Lectures. Today we're talking about changes in American culture and society, and specifically immigration from 1860 to 1910. And it was during this time of immigration that Emma Lazarus wrote a very famous poem about immigrants called The New Colossus. And let's see if you can figure out what this poem is about. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land, here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name the mother of exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome, her mile eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. And at this point, you should of course be thinking about the Statue of Liberty. And the Statue of Liberty becomes kind of a great symbol of immigration during this time, because it's often the first thing that a lot of these new immigrants are going to see when they arrive in New York City. But kind of that poem really, I think, kind of highlights the idea of kind of who these immigrants are and kind of what their hopes are. So who were these immigrants? In about a span of 50 years, 23 million new immigrants are going to come into the United States. They're mostly going to be from Europe, but there are some from Latin America, Asia, and Canada. The old immigrants are basically from North and West Europe. These are the Irish, the English, the Germans, who already had kind of a big ethnic presence in the United States. But there's also new immigrants, like those from Italy, Poland, and also Jewish people from kind of all over Europe are going to be kind of new immigrants, where they're going to kind of make kind of their first ethnic footprint in the United States. And in 1890, 15% of all Americans were foreign-born. So this gives you an idea of kind of how much this immigration is going to change American demographics. And they're going to come for a number of reasons. There's always push factors. In Europe, kind of farm and worker poverty was much worse than in the United States. Politically, there are wars and military drafts in a lot of European countries during this time. There's also political oppression in places like Ireland, and also socially, there's also religious persecution, especially kind of Jews all over Europe. And so those are the things pushing people out. What's pulling them to the United States is economic opportunity. There are industrial jobs, and there's also farmland available in the West for these immigrants. Politically, the United States has democracy, does not have a military draft at this time, and basically people believe that they will have a better kind of political situation. Also socially, people believe in the idea of social mobility and a higher standard of living, and also the protections of kind of religious freedom, especially kind of for Jewish immigrants during this time. And so what do the immigrants bring into the United States? They're going to bring culture, and that each immigrant group has really contributed something to kind of the bigger picture of American culture. And they're also going to bring their languages, their customs, all of those things. They're also going to bring their labor. Immigrants are going to really fill kind of the high demand for workers in industry, as well as kind of the amount of people needed to kind of settle the farmlands of the West. And so kind of immigrants bring a lot to the United States, and this immigrant narrative is going to kind of affect kind of the way that the United States is going to go. And a lot of these immigrants are going to come through Ellis Island in New York. And Ellis Island, New York is actually a center that was set up for the purpose of kind of processing immigrants. And once kind of the immigrants go through Ellis Island, oftentimes they ended up in cities. And in those cities, they would form ethnic neighborhoods. There's a bunch of reasons to form ethnic neighborhoods. See if you can come up with a couple in your mind right now. And the legacy of these ethnic neighborhoods are that we have places in our cities like Chinatown, Little Italy, Pilsen, Ukrainian Village, Greektown, the idea of the South Side Irish, kind of those ethnic neighborhoods created so that people could kind of have common language, common culture, and also somewhere where they kind of felt welcome. However, the immigrants in the cities often ended up in slums. Poverty in immigrant communities was high, and so because of this, not all immigrants are really going to stay. A lot of immigrants are actually going to come to the United States, work for a few years, and then basically leave to go back to their country of origin. And to kind of put a little spin on kind of the immigrant narrative here, here's what Pilsen used to look like back when it was kind of mostly Czech and kind of Polish immigrants. You can see kind of 18th and Hallstead. You can see kind of on Blue Island, Paulina and 19th Street. And so if we kind of look at Pilsen the way it is, we can still kind of see that footprint of kind of the immigrant community that was here kind of before the current day. But like always, there are people who do not want new immigrants in the United States. This idea is called nativism, and the anti-immigrant, anti-immigration feeling was also kind of widespread during this time. Unions feared immigrant labor, that basically the immigrants would come in and agree to work for less and dangerous conditions. Protestant Christians feared all of the Catholics and Jews coming in, and they believed that basically these religious groups would ruin the country. And also there's always the fear that newcomers will not assimilate and become American. So because of this, there was entire political movements that were dedicated to stopping immigration, and basically this idea is called nativism. And so here are some political cartoons that kind of show this idea of nativism. Kind of on the one hand, we have Uncle Sam trying to stop the Europeans from coming in. And then on the right, you can see the WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, who in one hand has a Chinese immigrant, in the other hand has an Eastern European immigrant, and saying what we would like to see is those people being grabbed and thrown out. So as we can see, kind of there's really always been kind of this idea of kind of anti-immigration sentiment in the United States. But there's a big movement in this time for cultural assimilation, in which to basically take these immigrants, their language, their culture, and merge it into kind of American culture at the time. It's called the Americanization movement. And this included things like holding classes in English, teaching American values and history in schools, kind of promoting American culture. And so kind of the idea of cultural assimilation is that immigrants at this time were expected to become American. They were allowed to kind of keep food, religion, some traditions, but they were also expected to give up some of their cultural identity in order to assimilate into the United States. And again, kind of the idea of cultural assimilation has always been controversial. And Theodore Roosevelt, an American who would eventually become president, and I'm sure kind of you've heard of him, said that basically we should insist that all immigrants should become American, that there can be no divided allegiance, that any man who says he is an American but something else isn't an American at all. And so Teddy Roosevelt kind of in this quote for us is summing up the idea that kind of Americans during this time, a lot of Americans were okay with immigrants, but they expected them to basically assimilate. We have room but for one language, English, room for one sole loyalty to the American people. And so kind of like today, debates over immigration are going to be very, very complex. And so kind of like now, back then Americans are split on the issue. Here's a political cartoon. You can see kind of the United States with kind of their dogs are trying to keep out the immigrants who are really kind of shown to be kind of monstrous type of people who are climbing over the walls of the United States and threatening America. And there are also political cartoons that basically say that all people should be welcome to the United States, that the United States is a land of opportunity and can offer kind of people a refuge from their countries that they came from. So, immigration, kind of a very, very big thing that's going to change demographics in American society during this time, still remains a controversial issue today.